E aí, gente? Hola, mi gente. Wagwan, everybody. So, I'm sure by now you've heard me talking about Language Linkup. And while some of you might know and have heard about it, or you might have seen the flyer, others might be wondering, what is this thing and why did I even decide to start it in the first place? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Hi, my name is Milton Foster. I am an audio engineer by profession, but I'm also a language learner. I'm from Kingston, Jamaica, if you couldn't tell by my accent. Yes, I'm here to talk to you about Language Linkup today. In my experience learning languages in Jamaica, it always felt like somewhat of a solitary process. So even though we know that there are so many people that study Spanish, French, you have some people who even might be interested in like Mandarin or Korean. It always felt like something that was a niche thing. And that struck me as pretty weird, because Jamaica is one of the only islands in this section of the Caribbean that actually speaks English. And yet still we can't communicate with our neighbors. So wanting to learn a second language in a country where that language isn't spoken is a challenge in and of itself. I was fortunate to have experience meeting people from other countries, like at my high school. Shout out to Arden. Some of my classmates were from Cuba. So I was fortunate to have that kind of interaction with people from other countries. Now, some of them, unfortunately, were not proficient in English, much less Patois. So I saw how difficult that transition was for them to integrate into the Jamaican society. And that kind of really led me to be interested in wanting to know more about their culture, wanting to understand their unique perspective, and just wanting to be able to sit down and chat and just welcome them to our space. So that was kind of what pushed me to start learning languages. And you can't necessarily just walk up to somebody and try to practice from day one. There's always going to be a little bit of tension and kind of, it just might not go how you expect it to. I don't know. So the easiest thing for me was to start learning via a language exchange online, which was one of the methods that I found after literally looking up on Google how to learn a language and watching every TED Talk, every video that I could find. Using that online language exchange really pushed me forward at a much faster pace than I would have expected, because who would think that just 2 weeks of holiday could really make much of a difference? But it was really that time that helped to push me forward and helped me to move closer to the goal of being conversationally fluent. And I continued to utilize the online language exchange resource, because I had a goal in mind. I wanted to meet somebody from every Spanish speaking country. So that's around 20 countries, 21 countries. So I wanted to have a language exchange partner in each of these Spanish speaking countries. And that way I could get to know their accents, their slangs, and just have a broader understanding of the Spanish language in general. Right, so having had the experience of studying overseas, now being able to meet people who actually speak Spanish, hearing Spanish all around me. I was in Florida, so you can imagine, there are lots of Latinos in Florida. I was glad to be in a space where I could actually hear the language being spoken around me. It's such a different feeling. And even though it's not my language, I just felt kind of proud to just be able to just walk up to people and just interact and so on. During that time, I also learned Portuguese, started online, then kind of moved into speaking to people in person. And then the pandemic happened and everybody was locked down. And whereas I used to have contact every day with people who spoke the different languages that I spoke, everything kind of went back to being online, so it was again that feeling of just sitting behind a screen, trying to connect with people, and it's just not the same. After coming back to Jamaica, when I completed my studies, I still wanted to maintain my interest in languages. Now at this point, I was about 5 years into my language learning journey. I'm proficient in both Spanish and Portuguese now. Yet still, I felt like there was still a disconnect because most of my interactions with these languages were happening over the phone. Fast forward to me having a great opportunity that kind of allowed me to be able to afford a trip to Colombia, which is one of the places that I always wanted to visit. And when I was putting together my itinerary, I saw that there were language exchanges in Medellin. So I was just like, oh shoot, I have to like work these into my schedule, you know. So over the 3 weeks that I was there, I tried to go to as many of these different language exchanges in person that I could. And I'm telling you, man, you meet people from all over the world, because it's not just about meeting locals, you know. You're meeting like different people who are also traveling, and it's a whole vibe. And I went to enough of these to kind of ask myself, why doesn't this exist in Jamaica? Like, there's no reason for this not to exist in Jamaica. It's a different style of event. It's not a party, it's not a corporate event, but it's a coming together of people from different cultures, and just a way for people to interact, you know. So coming back from that Colombia trip, that left me thinking there's a gap in the space, and I don't see anybody stepping up to fill it. I can acknowledge that I've seen like efforts from maybe single embassies to host events that are tailored just for their specific language, but I felt like no, we need a place where people can just come together. Maybe you can meet somebody who speaks a language you've never heard before, because we do have international residents and international visitors to Jamaica all the time. That's where Language Linkup was born, really, out of that feeling that, okay, yes, I've had experience, you know, studying online, meeting people when I was in college and so on, but I feel like there needs to be that space that kind of facilitates that desire for people to step out of their comfort zone and meet people and interact with people, you know, face to face, kind of like how I'm talking to you guys now. That's kind of like why Language Linkup was created. So let's look at something different now. What's the differentiating factor between Language Linkup and just like maybe other events that are tailored towards language? It's not an academic event. I mean, most things with language in Jamaica are tailored towards schools or maybe like professional services like translation and so on. Language Linkup is intended to be just a casual event, a casual space where people can just come and sit down, and you don't really feel the pressure of somebody judging you or trying to say you have to speak like this, or, you know, it's just an opportunity for you to kind of just practice what you've learned and to put yourself out there and learn something new. And with the added benefit of activities that are tailored towards helping people to start networking and to engage in learning vocabulary. It's something that I kind of just envisioned, you know. I brought together a few of my friends that speak other languages, some other Jamaicans that I know who are into languages, and I said, you know, let's start coming together and put this on and just see where it goes. And at this point, it's been 5 months into the journey, so it's still pretty new. The most people we've had at Language Linkup so far is around 30. So it's been growing steadily from just a group of like 8 people, beginning in November 2023. I really see it growing, and I see the interest. People are starting to kind of catch on and say, you know, this kind of really seems like something that we need and something that we can kind of help to grow, because the goal is really to facilitate that growth in community, you know, create that community where people feel welcome, people feel like they can make the effort to try and speak in a foreign language and to meet people. So, who is it for? Now, what generally tends to come to mind when you hear about a language exchange is something that might be a little formal, you know, tailored towards kind of pronunciation practice and so on. And as such, people might feel kind of intimidated, you know. They feel like, oh, I have to be really advanced and like really fluent before I even set foot anywhere near. And it's like, no. It's for everybody. When I say it's for everybody, I mean it's for everybody. Whether you're just kind of playing with the idea of starting to learn a foreign language, or you're already learning, you're kind of at the intermediate stage and you feel like you need something to kind of push you further so that you can continue advancing your skills. Or you might be advanced and you're kind of just looking for new ways to kind of interact with people, learn about different cultures. Yeah, and you're looking to meet like-minded people who are open to sharing about language and culture. So that's who it's for. It's for everyone. It's not just about the languages that I speak. I very much want to meet people who speak languages I might not have even heard of before, or languages that might not be so commonly recognized in the space. Just in the past couple of months while doing this, I've met Germans. I've met somebody who's from Hungary. I've met people who want to learn Hindi and so on. And yes, those languages are popular worldwide, but in Jamaica, you don't necessarily tend to hear about people having that kind of interest, So yeah, that's who it's for. Now that I know that I wanted to put together Language Linkup, it was difficult for me to figure out how to start. And we hear the most difficult step to take is just to start and to get going. And I kind of just made a little flyer and just put it out there just to see who would see it and who would come along. But as time goes along, and I want to incorporate more activities, I've been getting some really great feedback from the participants for activities and games that we can include. As much as I would like to keep this for free, there's a cost to everything. I mean, come on, we have to be realistic. So that's kind of part of the reason why I've been kind of shifting the approach as to how we're hosting these events, because I'd love for Language Linkup to continue to grow. I'd love to see more members of the community come out. I'd love to be able to continue to provide interesting and dynamic activities related to language learning so that, everybody can feel that it's just all around value for the community. So that's kind of part of the reason why we've been moving from the first initial 4 months of kind of just getting it off the ground, just seeing like the reactions and getting the feedback in the free offering, making it more streamlined so that, it can be great and it can be what our community needs out here. All right, so stay tuned. I definitely have some more stuff coming up related to Language Linkup, but also related to language in Jamaica. Shout out to Sila Mikhail, who was the camera operator, lighting, just want to thank him so much for this beautiful video that you guys are seeing here now. I'll definitely leave all of the social handles and everything in the description below and tag him, so you can check out his work as well. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Hasta luego y hasta luego. Later, everybody.